Hello, everyone. Welcome to IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Joel Ward, and with me is Matt. How are you doing, Matt?
Hey, doing good, Joel. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So, Matt, you are a sim and photographer. Is that correct?
That is. Yep.
That is awesome. Awesome. So, Matt, as a cinematographer, I would like to know a little bit more about you, and sure my viewers would as well. So, could you give us a little background about yourself and how you got into the cinema photography space?
It's okay. Yeah, and the other one, it's like cinematography, videography, video person who films. It's all, it's so hard too because nowadays when it comes to videography, you don't really know how to define it as much as you used to. Back in the day, especially for weddings, right? A videographer was a guy who showed up and held onto a camera and just filmed basically your day and then said, "Hey, here's all the footage." That title now, videographer and cinematographer, have kind of like melded together. And it is really kind of hard to find the line. So I run a business called Cascadia Films. It's out of Port Angeles, Washington, up here in the Pacific Northwest. What we kind of do is I started out doing this job as a creative, trying to showcase to people, especially in this area. The creative field isn't a very big thing up here. It's a very it's one of those where people, like everywhere, I guess, in life, people think that when you're a creative, you're going to be a starving artist. And I wanted to showcase a lot of the younger kids in this area because I'm 37 years old. And when I started doing this, there wasn't any videographers or cinematographers in the area. And the ones that were out here were doing very so they were doing kind of like hokey, I don't want to say hokey, but they were doing things that were very just what you would see on, if you were to turn on TV and it would just be an ad running on hey, come on down and try Ted's banking service. And to me, it didn't have it didn't have any passion behind it. So I started filming businesses, and in my first year doing business work for filming businesses, I think I received about 52 no's when I would send out emails to people. And this was back in 2015. Okay. So yeah, so there wasn't a lot of reception for doing videography in this area because people didn't really see the value in it. So, I just kept going for it and was like, you know what, I'm not going to give up on being able to film people doing their passion. So we started that second year, it went down to I think about 22 no's, and then the third year went down to 7 no's, and so on and so forth. But essentially what we do is we do filming in all shapes and factors. So we do weddings, we do athletic events, we do business filming, we do performance filming, we do, other than doing movies, actually creating movies, because that's not something that I am really passionate about. We do everything that we can to just showcase people, to showcase to other people what people's passion and love is for life.
Awesome. So you get to get the raw stuff. So let's go back into how you say the roles have kind of melded. So basically, what I remember going to a wedding, was it 2 years ago, and this guy was carrying around this camera. Oh my gosh, gimbal. He was carrying a gimbal with his phone attached, and he was shooting the wedding and stuff. And then he brought out a camera on a gimbal, and he was doing that. And I remember back when, way back when people were using little digital cameras to shoot things, and before that they were VHS tape cassette ones, and it's now you got these professional video cameras and DSLR cameras that can do great quality stuff, and even RED cameras and all this quality you can get out of it. But back then, you basically hand someone a tape. You couldn't really edit much. And now you have at your fingertips all this editing equipment. You can make it look amazing. And their special days are and even their businesses look phenomenal through tape. It's not like what you were just saying, come on down to Uncle Teddy's. It's actually really, really good film. And I think that's awesome. So let's dive into that for a second. Where you says it's melded as far as that. Now, you've done a lot of editing and stuff, and you have, you have employees, correct? I think I remember.
Yeah. So pre-pandemic we did. Post-pandemic, it's a little different now. And we can get into that, but yeah. So we started out it was just me, and then it started out with my wife, who also does it with me, and then we have before COVID we had a hair and makeup stylist. We had extra people that would that loved to do photography and video, and so that's where I met a lot of people. So yeah, so I did hire out. Post pandemic is it's different. It's different now. And we can get into that. But yeah, the world of creativity has definitely taken, I don't want to say a dive because it sounds negative, but it's a like all of our businesses now, it's a post-COVID world, and that's good and bad at the same time.
Yeah, and I actually did a episode which I recommend you check out if you have a chance, if you haven't already. The content creation. Me and my buddy who got me into the podcasting scene, we talk a lot about it, how content creation is so easy to obtain anymore. You've got your camera phone, which even Maddie Hunt, who's been on my show, said with the right camera on your phone, with the right phone and camera, you can create some great content. Like podcasting, I did it for my phone for a while, now I got equipment. Videography, you can use your phone and a nice gimbal, and you can shoot some great film. So content creation has become very obtainable. So for someone like you to get into spaces, it's pretty easy. But like you said, right now it is a little bit harder because post pandemic, it's kind of hard on a lot of people. Like a lot of people I know have their photography businesses either shut down, and then the ones that were getting clients every day have succeeded and stayed. But it's hard, and it's sad to see because people like you in a small, I'm assuming you're in a smaller area than I am, needs stuff like that is harder to obtain as far as like getting clientele. And Maddie even explained to me, it's like there's hundreds of photographers in her area, and she's got to struggle with everybody else. But like you said you're like the only videographer, or you?
Well,
like,
we're so they're through. Oh man! So there's an old story, and I can't remember the runner, but there was back in the day there was a famous runner that was told that if you run a 6-minute mile that your heart would explode, and so nobody thought that it could be done. And I only use that kind of that story is because when we first started doing this, I remember when it was probably about 7 years ago. I went with other creatives in the area that were doing video at that time, and I met with them similarly like this, and I said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of great story to be told in this area. I would love to be able to get with you guys, and let's not fight for, and I'm sure Maddie has told you, let's not fight for work. Let's come together, let's work together, and let's find the avenues of what we love to do that hey, you know what, maybe I'm not into doing doing government work. It bores me. That's not me, but maybe another videographer would. So I was like, hey, let's work together. And unfortunately at that time, 7 years ago, the videographers that were in this area were very, it was during a time that they thought that they would be able to really ride on social media and get brands like, like Columbia and North Face and Nike. And unfortunately in this area, I hate to say it, but it is, there isn't a really firm understanding of how life is outside of this area, if that makes any sense. It is one of those where it's like, yeah, North Face, Nike, these individuals, they're working with videographers, cinematographers that they've been in the game for a very long time. So there are other videographers and cinematographers in this area, but I would honestly say I don't think they are as well rounded as what we do. But they like they'll do weddings, or they'll do government work, or they'll do business filming, but they don't ever try to tackle all of them all together. And I came out of the military in 2008, and so for me, logistics, I was a cryptologist for 5 years of my life, and so for me, logistics and doing all that stuff and figuring out the stress of the job was part of the fun of it. So Yeah, we have other videographers in this area. It's just unfortunately, as much as I'd always try to get together with them and say, hey, look, why don't we piggyback and help each other? This area just does not, and I hate to say it, but this area of the Pacific Northwest, because we are on a peninsula, it is a very cutthroat for creative world out here, unfortunately.
It sounds like from what Maddie was giving me, it sounds very cutthroat, and it's very, even in this area, there's within 5 minutes from my house, there's 50 photographers in this area.
Yeah.
So it is a very, and cutthroat industry is, photography is a cutthroat industry, and so is videography, because if you have that skill, everybody's more than likely to have that skill. Just like IT, because I do some IT on the side. There's 5 different ITs in the area that in the same town as me doing all the same thing. And
and as you know, and as you, and as you picked up, there's one thing about doing photography and videography and cinematography or IT work. It's a whole other side to do it as a business. And I always tell kids and people that I work with, hey, I love my job, but it is 80% business and 20% actually putting my feet on the ground and going filming. And that to me that's the gate that you find that when people start, it's great. You can go out and you can get, you can go do video, you can do photography, but can you repeatedly get paid to do that, to make it a living, is a whole other line of work.
Well,
and I think that's for us.
And I jumped into it, and I jumped into IT, and all of a sudden it's I got all these clients, and now it's kind of slow. And then since post-COVID, things have just died down. And then I was like, what am I going to do? So I jumped into the podcasting scene, and I was like, there's so many podcasts. There's actually, I was reading this article that there's 2 million podcasts, but out of those 2 million podcasts, only a certain percentage are still producing content. So I hit my 50th episode a few days ago, and
great.
It was phenomenal.
Congrats.
Because thanks. It was great because a buddy of mine was telling me, he's some of these content creators in the podcasting world. He's I've seen they sent me stuff to listen to and they want me to subscribe to their stuff, but then they've only got 4 episodes and they're done.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad, because I'm trying to create content. I'm trying to create a show where I want, and this is how my show starts. I want people to get education. I want them to hear something they've never heard before, or learn something they've never learned before. So as far as you, videography, I've never had a cinematographer or videographer on my show who has knowledge about stuff that maybe some people on the show never even heard of. They're oh, what's a videographer, or what do they do, or how do they define their job? So that's why I was interested when Maddie passed me your name. I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your work. You said before we jumped on the show, you work with the Boys and Girls Club in your area. So what do you exactly do for them? Do you shoot intro videos for their ads, or what do you do?
So for nonprofit work, what happens is normally what happens is, especially during fundraising, and that's now more than ever, is as I I've been reading just about how really what's happening is fundraising and money drives for nonprofits in general are really on the decline right now, because people, one, they either don't have the money, they do have the money, and they're just not, or 3, because of COVID, you can't go to these events. And right now I'm using a DSLR to do live streaming, and we have live streaming capabilities, and we've done that for clients. The issue is it's different from watching a live streaming event on your phone, opposed to actually being at the event to say, hey, you know what, I want to help out this organization, because you feel like other people around you are donating and you're raising up your paddle and you're saying, so it's kind of like that energy in the room that gets deflated when you're watching it online. And not to say that live streaming doesn't have its uses. It definitely does. We all saw that during COVID. So for Boys and Girls Club, for an instance, is so they just built this just a $2 or $3 million brand new clubhouse in Port Angeles, Washington. And the issue is that because of COVID, it's not like they can just bring you through on a walkthrough of it with all these kids around and say, hey, we're going to do walkthroughs of what this new building looks like. So they're like, hey, can you create us a campaign video that would showcase the inside of this place? We could sit down and we could do interviews with an assortment of people, And by the end of this video, you know, I think of the original concept. I mentioned the last one we just did. It was like a 3-minute video, and it ended up turning into like an 8-minute project, or an 8-minute video, which is a really long time, as you know, to watch a video for. Yeah. But it's one of those things where, like you, when I sit down with someone and I'm interviewing them in front of a camera, they're not used to being in front of a camera. And so sometimes you get some really great interviews and some really heartfelt ones. Other times you get ones that aren't that way. And I've had people in my profession like break down crying. I've had people cuss me out. I've had people, and doing this for, 8 years or 7 or 8 years, I've had a wide gamut of emotions when you sit down and you're talking to someone. So like Boys and Girls Club, they're phenomenal people. I tend to look for, I tend to really gravitate towards businesses and nonprofits of people who represent the underdog, because for me, that's part of, I think that was part of me growing up, is that, I use creativity as a way to, fight loneliness. You know, I've had clinical depression since I was 8 years old. Getting out of the military, I had really bad PTSD. My mom, unfortunately, when I was 22 years old, committed suicide. And this idea that video, cinematography, our phones, we're able now to immortalize people that we no longer 20, 30 years ago, other than like you're talking about big VHS videotapes. But even that we're now able to take something, and I'm a nerd when it comes to movies, but we're able to take something like Ghostbusters, take these images, these video, upload it to Google and YouTube, and we're immortalized basically for the next 30, 40, 50 years of our life. So that's what drove me to kind of do this job, and that's what drives me to work with a lot of nonprofits in my area, because they are people who, they're to volunteer your life or volunteer your hours 7 days a week or 5 days a week for 10 hours a day, and you're volunteering for no amount of money. Those are the people where I'm like, I have such admiration for what you do, because I know what it's like to feel like you desperately want to help out this message that you yourself can't do it alone. So I try to seek that out, and I try to really put it out there in my community. Like, hey, one of the things that I love to do is I love to meet with, youth, and I love to meet with people who are in all sorts of age groups and talk about mental illness and depression, and saying, and kind of taking out the tabooism of it, of saying like, hey, you know what, you're most likely going to deal with this for the rest of your life. And the thing about it is as much as you hate it, it is also a blessing, because it allows you to see the world differently than what other people see it. And that is a part of creativity that is a very really undefined characteristic that I see. The fact that when you have someone who is in creative world, they're using like they're the drug addicted ones, or the ones that are with alcohol. But you rarely ever find ones that are like, hey, guess what? I have clinical depression, but I still am able to get out there and help people through this sorrow that I have in my soul. And therefore, it really does help me to be able to... And that's why, again, when I see that kid who's by himself that's filling out homework at the Boys and Girls Club, or let's just say we're working with homeless with United Way, and I can get in there and I can just have a one-on-one conversation with that person while I'm filming and just ask them who they are and what life has been like for them. It really does open up your world to say, like, I am much smaller than I actually think that I am. And that humbleness comes from, like, that's what I love to work with. So, in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to go over and say thank you for your service.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it.
Respect to the military. And I would like to actually dive into that a little bit, if you don't mind me talking about it. So what did you said you were a cryptographer?
Yeah, as a cryptologist, which is basically someone who we work intel. So I was in Iraq for about 14 months, from about 2007 to the end of 2008. just doing intel work, which I can't really dive into a lot of that stuff. I had a it was a fun job. It was definitely one of those where after I got back, I'd seen all like the dirty of the world basically being over there, and I'd just seen a lot of evil and a lot of just like not cool things, right? And so when I got back here to the States, I found one, how lucky we are to have what we have here, and two, how I really learned that taking what I learned in the military and putting it towards my filming business. So, that cryptology.
Yeah. Awesome. So I would like to actually, we actually had a great guest on a while. I think it was my very first video episode thing. She's called Charlene Ariche. She is a model, a plus size model. She is a body influencer. She likes to promote body positivity. So I'd like to actually dive into promoting mental health for a second. Yeah. So with your interviews, you're able to meet people where they're at, especially in the Boys and Girls Club and stuff, and meet people who have probably gone through a lot and lost family members or homelessness and stuff. So, a lot of those people, and for you, going through clinical depression, you're able to meet people and diagnose them with some hope in a way, right?
Yes.
I mean, you're able to come in and say, hey, I have this, and look what I'm doing. I'm growing myself and trying to promote goodness in the world. And from what you said, you've seen the bad, and what you come back from the military, and you saw the bad, and how blessed we are over here. There's a lot of people here, in the States, who struggle daily from mental health, and they, I myself have my days, but there's other people who are worse than me, and there's a lot of people out there who are struggling, and I'm glad to see that someone is promoting some good in the world. And there's a lot of people out there who deserve someone who's on their side and someone who can speak for them. And I think that's great that you're like, hey, I got this issue of my own, but I'm here showing you that I'm out there. I am doing something with myself. I haven't let it win. I'm not letting it going to win. And that's awesome. I think that's really great. So let's talk about it for a second.
Yeah.
What measures do you take daily to keep yourself mentally stable? Like, keep your mind. Let's keep your mind.
I know. The only reason why I laugh at that is because it changes every day, and the thing about depression, as you know, is I call mine the beast. So the beast is always there. It's always and the reason why I call it the beast is because it's kind of like the old black and white movies, or even up until then with the werewolf, right? The werewolf is the fact that you can be a completely normal individual, but it's sometimes in a full moon you transform into something that you have no idea what you look in the mirror and you're like, I am so different right now. And so mine's the beast, and the beast is always there. It's always scratching to get out. It's always been that way since I was a kid. I'm very open about myself to people, and I think that's why they gravitate a little bit more towards me when it comes to creative work, is because I was a cutter when I was a kid. I really did. I didn't know how to escape the pain that I was going through in my heart and in my mind. And as I've gotten older now at 37, how I get through it now is fitness is... Man, if I were to say the one thing that really saved me during COVID, my wife and I, we lost because we had a lot of contracts that were in the government and also in the area. When COVID hit, we lost about $53,000 over a weekend. And all of our income just shut off, like everyone's, right? Because the shutdown happened. But then it was the residual. It was this idea that like that wasn't the end of it. That was now, I knew it was going to happen for the next year or 2 or 3 years, that my job was going to have to come back very slowly. And so we got rid of our house and we ended up moving in with family, and we sold everything that we had with the exception of filming equipment to make that possible. So I really fell into it, like many people I'm sure. I fell into such a huge mode of like, what is my purpose when the purpose that I've thought I was here to do is no longer here anymore. So fitness was one of those where I was like, you know what? And I just got done joking about this with my wife. I said, if I'm going to look back on this last year and I'm going to look at my life and I'm going to say, wow, look how utterly like chaotic it was, and look how much I lost. At least I can look back and look at it and say, hey, you know what? At least look how much I really honored health in my life, and look how much I decided to really dedicate towards working on my mental and physical body. And so that's what I've done for the last year. I've started picking up running and training, and I go to the gym 6 days a week, and I work out for 2.5 hours a day, and I run for 45 minutes, and I never really was into fitness at all. And I don't do it so that way. I mean, I don't do it so, and I know everybody says that. I don't do it so that way I can be like, you know, hey, look how great I look, because I'm always going to be a geek. I'm always going to be a nerd. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if I look like, sorry, I don't know if there's any background noise, but even if okay, good. Even if I look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I would still look at myself and be like, you are a huge nerd. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. So that whole thing is fitness, reading. Man, have I read so many books. I have done so many different things to just make sure that I can continually just figure out what to do in order to get over this feeling of depression. So, yeah. Every day's different, man.
Yeah. No, I feel you. There's a lot of people who are in the same place as you who just either lost their jobs or their homes and stuff, and it's been a roller coaster. I'd like to switch gears real quick. We are coming up on the end of the show, but I'd like to switch gears about entrepreneurship. So this show is basically a tech show, entrepreneur show, business show, basically talking about what ways you can get into the entrepreneurship world. Like, you know, what can you do, get in stuff. So is there any recommendations like you can give people that you would say, hey, this is what I would do to get into the creative space. This is what I would do to get into entrepreneurship. This is what I would do to get into the world of possibilities, as it were.
So the recommendation that I would definitely say is failure always leaves direction. And so for me, that's going through and looking at the failures of other people, not in a like, waha, you failed, but more of a, hey, you know what? This is where I can learn in my life. And so when it comes to creativity, the best thing that I always tell new creatives is, and people getting into the job in business is fail. You know, don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of getting out there. And I know people say that, and I know that's like, but I'm a huge advocate. Like, you learn so much by failing in your life. And you get back up from those failures. You don't learn very much when you succeed in life beyond like, hey, I succeeded. That was it. But when I show up at an event and I'm flying a drone and that drone happens to get caught in wind and it ends up in a tree, and now I have to go and get an arborist to go up into that tree to grab that drone, it's now created this whole opportunity that now I know how to fix this the next time that this comes around. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we consistently have to do as entrepreneurs or people who are in the creative field is look at those failures, write them down. Every single time that I take a new job on and I there's something that fails in it or I make a mistake, I write it down, and then I go back later and I read it and I say, okay, what could I have done in that instance to make sure that next time it'll be a success? And then you do it. And you just do that enough times, as you know, in your line of work and everything. You just do it enough times, you trip enough times, you start to learn how to maneuver around those areas of tripping. You learn how to pick yourself up faster. You learn how to overcome those obstacles, and you end up just shrugging them off. And I've done all sorts of things, from interviews and forgotten to turn on microphones after people have given these heartfelt messages. I have done every mistake possible when it comes to filming. And again, I'm glad I did, because they really taught me how to do this job better.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. We have a few minutes left. I would like to ask you a few more, maybe one more question. Yeah. So, you know, as a creative, what's one thing that if you were to do differently when you were younger, like as far as when you first started in the videography role, what is one thing you would have done differently compared to now?
I think if I were to really, I'm trying to imagine myself, even back when I was like 13 and I was doing this kind of work for photography. I think I would have went back and I would have told myself, it's okay to get lost. It's okay to feel like you don't have it all together. It's okay to continually strive to find your creative voice in the world, because the biggest problem with finding your creative voice is you think that you find it and you got your voice, but sometimes you lose your voice. And I think through COVID, I think many of us have kind of either we've lost our voice, we're not as confident as we used to be, but I think, like we talked about, there is opportunity out there that if I were to tell myself, even I hope in the future, if like 50-year-old Matt were to come talk to 37-year-old Matt, he would say, I'm glad you didn't give up, because you could have. And I think a lot of people right now, they're on that verge of like, I should just give up. What is this even for? But the thing about it is when you have that passion in your heart, you can't give it up. It will haunt you in the best ways, but it will. And as you know, probably doing podcasting, IT work, everything that you've done, you can't give it up. Like, you're going to be up at 1 o'clock at night thinking about it. And it's going to persistently follow you everywhere you go until you finally say, all right, like, I get it. I'm going to do what you asked me to do. And then it just works. And then somehow you find success and you're like, why was that so hard for me to just say, okay, I'm going to do it? That's what I would tell myself is, hey, you know what? It's okay. You're going to get lost. You're going to get lost so much in your life. And that's 100% part of finding yourself and your creative voice.
Yeah. I actually, we are on the show time, but I would actually, for a few minutes, I want to go back to that, because you were saying don't give up. Like, telling yourself not to give up. There is so much, even going back to mental health, there's so much people who right now in the world are so distraught because of financial ruin or loss of a home or loss of a loved one due to COVID or everything. And the one thing that, that just struck me is, like, one of the things that, like, I had lots of stuff going on during COVID that just, I was like, this is not going to happen. What do I do? And it's like, don't give up. Because one of the things that a lot of people do not realize, and one of the things I think you can attest to, is if you don't try, you won't succeed. Because the one thing that I have learned is if I just give up, I'll never know what the end was. Like, I'll never get to know what happened. But if you continue and you keep striving, you keep pushing, and you just keep going at it, and pray and hope for the best outcome, and maybe something will happen that's going to turn it around. Or maybe something won't. But you won't know unless you try and keep up with it. So I like that. Don't give up. And that can be used in so many different ways. That doesn't just telling your old self. That's telling a lot of people right now is don't give up. There's so much more in this world that has to offer you. Even if it seems so dark, I have learned that there is so much light in the darkness that you may not see it at the time, but it will come out. So that was awesome, dude. I'm about to emotionally tear up about that. Your story is just phenomenal, dude. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And just one night, and that's part of it too, is the equal amount of darkness that we feel during depression and during these times. The opposite effect will happen in the light that we can bring to others, and through our talents and what we do in life. That ultimately, I believe, that is what's going to save us, and what we're all going through right now is shining a light and saying, hey, you know what? You got this. Like, I'm going to come up alongside you. I'm going to put my arm around you, and I'm going to say, you may not be strong right now, but I guarantee you that I'm going to help you, because you're going to do the exact same thing to me when I'm feeling down. So I appreciate that. Awesome.
Dude, that's awesome. I like that. I'm like, this is actually a very emotional episode now, because like I know we're past time, but I actually just recently lost my grandmother, and it wasn't to COVID, but there was just so much that just happened during it, and it was like really, it was really, you know, hard. And I had people who came along and said that, like, they're the best is yet to come. Don't give up. There's so much more. And it's just stuff like that. I was like, wow, like, and to hear you say, like, coming up alongside people, like, that's what we need as a country right now. For all of us to just come together, come alongside people, and just love on everybody, because there's so much hurt right now. And I like that that you're like talking about that, because there's so much need for that right now. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I loved having you on the show, dude. This was an awesome show. I'm hoping, I can't wait to see the messages I'm going to get from the show, from the, like, people who are responding to this.
Awesome.
I do get some people who respond to my shows, so I really hope that it was a positive influence on people. I really hope they learned something. Thank you so much for being on the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Please stay safe out there. Again, I know we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but please stay safe. Like Matt said, love your neighbor. Like, just love on everybody, because there's a lot of people who are in your circles who are hurting right now. So thank you so much, Matt. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem.
I hope to have you on the show here in the future.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome.